Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AF. We're talking in just a few minutes. We're going to be joined by Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin. We will talk about that threat to religious liberty mentioned at the top of the hour. Now, here is John Kerry. He's the head of the State Department, took over for Hillary Clinton, and he is asked by the press again about this witnesses issue. You got people in the State Department, and I want you to listen carefully to his answer because he dodges the question completely. They know that they are obstructing justice here. They know that they are preventing people that do have a story to tell. They are preventing people that have information that Congress needs to hear. And he's basically admitting it because he doesn't answer the question. Let's listen to the exchange between the reporter and John Kerry.
Enormous amount of misinformation out there. The simple fact is that when I testified before the Congress a couple weeks ago now, I said very clearly to the chairman of the House, both House committees, that we would work with them as closely as possible, put every question to us, whatever it is you need, and I would assign somebody to be responsible to work with them to answer those questions. My chief of staff, David Wade, was in touch with them forthwith, has been in touch with them, and we're prepared to work openly and accountably to answer any of those questions. So we have to demythologize this issue and certainly depoliticize it. American people deserve answers. I'm determined that this will be an accountable and open State Department as it has been in the past, and we will continue to do that, and we will provide answers.
So the question was, do you have anything to say about these assertions from employees that employees are being prevented from testifying to Congress? Kerry doesn't even answer that question. We're going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to have the most open and transparent State Department in history. I've got people working on this forthwith. We're going to be all over this thing. We're going to get the answers that people are looking for. Doesn't even answer the question, which to me is an admission that that's what they're doing. They're trying to keep people from testifying on this very, very important issue. Now, one other thing, I'll mention that I didn't find out about this till yesterday. The FBI has their most wanted terrorist list. Remember, we have the United States military, personnel in the United States military, classifying the AFA as a domestic hate group and as a domestic terror threat. We had that training done with those in the Army Reserve. And they were told that the number one domestic terror threat in the United States are evangelical Christians. Roman Catholics were on that list ahead. Evangelical Christians were on that list ahead of Al-Qaeda. Now, that was scrapped, but nevertheless, the presentation was made. That slide was prepared deliberately as a part of that PowerPoint presentation. Lieutenant Colonel Jack Rich, Fort Campbell, identified FRC and AFA as domestic hate groups. Again, to people under his command, these are people you got to watch out for. They do not share our Army values. So you would think then if evangelicals and Roman Catholics and Tea Partiers and conservative groups like AFA and FRC, if we were the domestic terror threat that our own military says we are, then if you've got a list of the FBI's most wanted terrorists, there's 31 names on this list, how many would you expect to be evangelicals if the military is telling us the truth? If the number one domestic terror threat in the United States is evangelical Christians, you got a list of 31 of the most wanted terrorists, you would expect a pretty substantial percentage of those 31 to be evangelical Christians. You know how many evangelical Christians or Roman Catholics or Tea Partiers or AFA members or FRC members are on that list of the top 31? Zero. Nada. Zip. There are 31 names on that list, and 30 of them, ladies and gentlemen, are Muslims. Out of the 31 most wanted terrorists on the FBI's list, this again, the FBI not a part of the vast right-wing conspiracy, 31 terrorists on the FBI's most wanted list, and 30 of them are Muslims. And the one who isn't is an animal rights activist. You got those animal rights people that will go around, they'll torch cars and blow up parking lots to protest what's being done to animal rights activists. But not one of the 31 is an evangelical Christian or a Roman Catholic or a member of the Tea Party. And to help us sort through some of this, I'm delighted to welcome to our decision-maker line Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, Executive Vice President at the Family Research Council. He was one of the original members of the U.S. Army's Delta Force and commanded the Green Berets for a time, as well as heading up the Special Warfare Center and school. Spent 36 years in the Army and served in his last 4 years as the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. So certainly a man in position to offer insightful comment about what's going on in the military. General Boykin, welcome back to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Hey, Brian, I'm glad to be with you.
A couple of quick things. I want to talk with you about this religious liberty threat in particular, but have you heard the news, General Boykin, that according to the Daily Mail Online, President Obama was warned in person by the Saudi Arabian foreign minister about Tamerlan Tsarnaev back in January of this year? Have you heard that?
I just got an email through one of the communities of interest that I am part of. I haven't gone into it in any great detail, so I'm probably not able to comment at this point.
That's just amazing to me. I mean, according to this piece by the Daily Mail in the UK, the Saudi government actually sent written communication to the Department of Homeland Security in 2012 warning us about this guy. Saudi Arabia wouldn't even let this guy into the country, this the older brother, Tamerlan Tsarnaev. Anyway, What I wanted to talk with you about, General Boykin, this is something that's deep concern to me, and we'll spend some time with our listening audience in the second hour on this, but tell us what's going on with Pentagon policy with regard to religious liberty, how dangerous it is, and how concerned we ought to be.
Well, I think today everybody's focused on something that came out from Mikey Weinstein and this military Religious Freedom Foundation. But it's a bigger problem than just this. First of all, this is another thing in a series of events that have all been primarily target the Christian and Protestant in our military. There's been a number of things that have been very troubling with regards to, for example, an email that came out from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, from a Lieutenant Colonel Rich, who wrote about 34 of his subordinates telling them that they must stay away from organizations like mine, the Family Research Council, like yours, the American Family Association, and other Christian-type groups. And they lumped us in his email, they lumped us in with the Ku Klux Klan. Now, that's only one issue. They've obviously tried to remove Bibles from Walter Reed. They took the steeples and the crosses down at a chapel over in Afghanistan. They wrote a war game scenario at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, identifying Christians as potential threats. They wrote another document at West Point identifying Christians as potential threats, and those are just a few things. So there's a pattern now of attacks on Christianity. I believe it's an all-out assault on Christianity, and I'll tell you what, now is the time, if you know, for those people out there in America, whether you, regardless of your faith, if you believe in the Constitution, now's the time to do something.
You know, General Boykin, I'm looking at a column posted this morning by Ken Klukowski of FRC about what Mikey Weinstein is doing, what the Pentagon is doing with regard to religious liberty, and I find this almost impossible to believe. I want you to comment it. According to Ken Klukowski, this is a quote from the proposed policy on religious liberty, quote, religious proselytization, which is just sharing your faith,
right,
is not permitted within the Department of Defense. Court-martials and non-judicial punishments are decided on a case-by-case basis. I mean, I find this hard to believe, General, that now the military is going to make it a crime to share your faith on a base or with a fellow soldier.
Well, you bring up a very interesting point. Proselytization is nothing but sharing your faith, living your faith, free exercise thereof, which I believe is in the First Amendment. And so what you're seeing is you're seeing some confusion over what proselytization is. On the one hand, the First Amendment says that our ability to exercise our faith shall not be impeded. On the other hand, in the military, the very people that support and defend that Constitution are being told that they cannot witness, cannot share their faith with anyone else. I don't believe that that will withstand the scrutiny of the Constitution or a legal challenge on that, because I believe that is unconstitutional.
One last question on this, General, before I let you go. Here you have these policies that are being implemented at lower levels in the military, the email sent out by Lieutenant Jack Rich, the scenarios that you described. My point here is that this is a radical thing. This is the most anti-Christian thing I think that's ever come out of the military, where you could be court-martialed for sharing your faith. You know, giving a 4-law booklet to a spiritually needy soldier could land you in military prison. But, and this is what I want you to comment on, this has to come from the top down. In other words, this wouldn't be done at the Pentagon unless the people in the Pentagon that are putting this together knew that this would be okay with the commander-in-chief. How anti-Christian do you believe our current commander-in-chief is?
Well, I think your point is very well taken. I think that it's look, it's not just the commander-in-chief. It is the entire administration, and I don't think this originated in the Department of Defense. The administration has a extreme left agenda, and part of that agenda is to suppress the Christian faith. It is to remove all vestiges of that Christian faith, not only from the military, but from society. And then they ask, the question is why? And my answer to that is because this concept of unalienable rights upon which this nation was founded was a new thing at that time. It has sustained us. And now as we move to becoming more of a Marxist-oriented nation, you have to remove God so people depend on the government. My answer, plain and simple.
Our guest has been Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, Executive Vice President of Family Research Council, 36 years in the Army, including one of the original members of the U.S. Army's Delta Force and commander of the Green Berets, 4 years in military intelligence. General Boykin, thank you so much for taking time to be with us today.
Thank you, Brian.
We'll be back after the news. But again, I'm making this point in some of the interviews I've been doing this week that under this commander-in-chief, our own military is on the verge of becoming the most virulently anti-Christian, anti-religious force in the United States of America, more hostile to religious liberty even than the ACLU. Focal Point AFR Talk.